went on and share your dates. So I will share that I went on August 13th through 15th, 2023, which was my birthday.
Awesome.
And then Elias.
I feel like such an imposter right now. I've never actually been on the Halcy-Con.
But we love you and love it.
Yeah, but like here's the thing, like I love Star Wars. I've been into Star Wars since I was like 4 years old when my dad showed me the movies. And being here, being involved with the Star Wars community, I feel like I'm getting a piece of the Halcy-Con right here for the first time. And I'm so excited to share my craft with you guys.
Joyce.
Joyce, and our voyage was July of 2022. So I am on the lookout for somebody who has gone that early. I feel like I was so early. It was
Yeah,
July.
I went, I think it was actually beginning of July or June 2022.
I think it was so early that it was before it really took off and people were building communities and that kind of stuff. So
I agree.
March 22. That's even better. You win the prize.
Oh, this is a fun. No, this is a fun game. We're gonna figure out.
Yeah, you won.
But don't you feel like your cabin mates, people who you met, are you connected with any of those people? Are you still?
So my cabin mates were my family. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Still your family.
It was very cool to come back the next year and see how much it has changed.
But yeah, I think those early cruises were just a little absent of that community that didn't get to build until
Okay. On the other hand, my ship name is Dead Marsh, my earth name is June Swords, and I was on both May 4th voyages. And we were insane.
Okay, we gotta go because just say a date and then keep going.
All right. I was with you on the May the 23rd cruise.
I'm June's husband, so I was on both voyages.
Yeah, this whole front row.
Go through. I'm up high. You're good.
2023 though.
Next row. September 6th of last year.
Okay.
I know we it's all good. It's all good, which meant it was memorable.
I'm ship saying August 13th.
Yay, August 13th.
Good fourth voyage.
June 626. August 3rd. I already went.
Right, March? Do y'all remember when you went?
September 22.
Yes. It was June 2023.
Okay.
June 22nd. September 22.
May 4th.
And I had a June 26th.
We're sharing what cruise date we went on.
September 10th.
Okay.
Never went.
Oh, but we see, I love this community because we love you. We all will do again together. Okay.
That's one.
Thank you so much for joining us with this session. And the purpose really was to talk about how the Star Cruiser and the things that we were making for our cruises to give away or for our costumes or things that we were inspired with when we left, how that made us really improve our skill set and our craft. So first, June, tell us a little bit about what your specific genre and your favorite type of craft is.
Well, I've always been a crafter. I mean, starting from very, very young age. My mother sews, so I've always been sewing. But when I walked into the cabin, one of the first things that went through my head was, I want that blanket. I can't wait to get down to the gift shop and buy that blanket. And imagine my surprise, they didn't have it. Nothing. They had nothing from the room was available except for the little bathroom tent. just inconceivable. So that was just, I want that, so I'm going to make it. And then I realized, well, I want it. Maybe somebody else might want it. And then that launched.
Sailed right out there.
Sailed right at it. Yeah, so I'm making the blankets, the quilts. I like big things. I like making big things. Oh. That's my alarm to stop sewing and go to the post office.
So, actually, like June, I've been a crafter my entire life. I like to utilize recycled materials as much as I can. Even in the projects that I do now, I have very little waste, and the waste that I do have, I turn it into packaging. But I've always crafted. I was once in charge of a special events at a major university with a negative budget. So I had to make things work out of other things. You know, we're talking like paper towel holders and that kind of stuff. So I've always been into crafting, but now specifically sewing is my number one. But I do other things as well.
Hi, I'm Beth FitzGibbon, aka Sasha Nori. I really started making in earnest in around 2007. I started knitting, but knitting took a lot of time, so I started sewing, but that took a lot of time, and then I started doing jewelry because that was like less time than sewing and knitting, and then I started soldering. So there you go. And then I started making things for our Star Cruiser trips, like name tags, and I made memento pin. The pin that you got from me is in a long line of pins. So every cruise I went on, I gave out a pin, and then in each Star Cruiser event or con, I gave out a pin. And then somebody asked if I could make them a copy of the atrium art as a sign. So I did a sublimated metal sign with the atrium art, and it said, you know, may the stars light your way. And then it was like, oh, could you actually? So then I was like, oh, I could make like an acrylic light of this and put it in one of those things that lights up. And now you know, now I have 2 3D printers, each with 4 AMSs, which means I can use 16 colors of filament in each one. And I've got 2 laser cutters and a Cricut and all that. And it just, the amount of self-expression that the Star Cruiser creates, the landscape of places where you can tap into and bring out your creativity, it is like endless. I mean, I'm now like, yes, I'm gonna be quiet now.
I'm Elias Fulton of Customs for the Kid. I've been a crafter since I was 6 years old. My craft is custom action figures. I actually have some work in the exhibit down the hall if you'd like to go see it. And while I didn't go to the cruiser, this community, you know, coming to me through the convention administrators commissioning me for work has pushed me to become a better crafter. You know, every project is practice.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was asked to make an action figure of Gaia and of Kevin. And that kind of like, having to do projects like that opens doors for me creatively, having to learn how to sculpt on my laptop using Blender. The more professional software to use is ZBrush, which I'm still figuring out. But for now, Blender works. And, you know, getting a 3D printer, that opened so many doors for me creatively. There's so many things I'm currently capable of that I wouldn't be capable of without that tool. I use an SLA printer, which is a resin printer, and you get much higher resolution prints out of it. So working in a small scale, that's important. You know, if you're in shopping for a 3D printer, research what you're going to get. You know, there's filament printers which print layer by layer, and those are really great. And if you want to maybe make something smaller, where having print lines is going to like take away from the detail of your product, then maybe get an SLA printer. You know, figure out what best fits the needs of your specific craft. But yeah, that's a little bit about me and what I'd like to share.
So out of all of these things we talked about, what was the one machine that you picked up that you didn't have before, that you cannot live without now?
Oh my gosh. It has to be 2 machines because people wanted me to make the bunk bags. In order to make the bunk bags, I needed to make the patch. In order to make the patch, I wasn't going to silk screen it. I needed it to be embroidered. So, gotta get the embroidery machine. And then I started off with a Singer 4423. I won't hear anyone speak ill about these machines. I love them. But
Oh, I meant just passing.
it's a very small harp, and for quilting, you know, I can do one quilt in it and take my time and do it. But once I realized people really wanted the quilts, I needed to be able to up my efficiency, and so I had to invest in a long arm.
For me, it was definitely a 3D printer. When we went on the Star Cruiser in July, school had my kids were at home. I bought that first 3D printer to babysit them, and they sat there and they watched that baby all these lines all summer.
I know, I wasn't.
And what started this is there was a kid at one of my kids' schools that had a side hustle selling fluxy dinosaurs. He was selling fluxy dinosaurs in the boys' bathroom. He got caught.
That kid is going
He got
places.
caught, but my kid brought me a fluxy dinosaurs. That was the first time I'd ever seen anything. 3D printers, I think, were a luxury, right? Who had one of those? We have two now. So that was definitely something that started out, that my kid brought it home, and then it ended up being the babysitter, and then we turned into this huge thing. It's, you know, it's part of our product, but it was definitely the 3D printer, which I never would have thought that we would have bought, let alone turn over a $1,000 machine to one of my kids and say, here. But the 3D machine, what has really done for them and to watch them is thinking in a 3D dimensional. X, Y, and Z. Who's thinking about that on a daily basis? But to see their little minds kind of thinking that out loud and making something that didn't exist before, that was a big deal for us. So definitely the 3D printer for us.
So it's ironic. Does anybody remember MakerBot? So in 2007, 2006, I was really good friends with Bree Pettis, who founded MakerBot. So I ordered the original one where you made it yourself, the wooden MakerBot. And then I didn't do 3D printing until January of this year when I got a bamboo. And I was like, this is so different. And I was really resistant to 3D printing because I've been married to my laser cutter. I first had a Glowforge, now I have the X-Tool T2. And I think I was kind of a snob because I felt like acrylic, when you can make things that are so precise and crisp, and so I sort of poo-pooed, because I did the acrylic version of the ship registry plate, and then the 3D version came out, and I was like, but that's like puffy. You know, mine is like smooth. And then my husband got me a bamboo for Christmas, and holy crap. Now the funny thing is, I still don't think in X, Y, Z. I think my brain just can't operate. Thank you. So if anybody didn't get a pin, let me know. My brain can't think in 3D. So what I do, and where my crafting skills kind of amped up, was I take something like, I do the crew signs. I've got the crew members and the refresher and all that. I took that and I designed it as an SVG, which is a flat 2D file, and then I pull it into Tinkercad, which is on the web, and then I make it 3D. And so it's easy. It's like basically just taking 2D and going. And then someone commissioned a baby mobile. Well, they commissioned something for a nursery that was Star Cruiser related, and I came up with the idea to do a mobile that would spin around, and it was going to have, and it had the Chandrilla logo, and it had the ship, and it had little D3s and little planets and little stars, and then when it spun, I had a little music box that played May the Stars Light Your Way. And so I sent the comp, and D3 was flat, and the planets were flat, and the stars were flat, and she was like, can you make the planets round? And I was like, oh shit. Going XYZ, baby. So I'm still not great at it, but that's the thing I love the most about people who commission things. And by the way, if you commission something and I end up wanting to sell it in my shop, you get yours for free. People who commission things are really pushing me to play, but yeah, going and making a round planet, you would think that I was like in kindergarten.
You know, like as you were saying about Tinkercad, when I first started getting into 3D sculpting, that was the program that I used. Then I learned about Blender, and that's like a lot better for when I had to sculpt like faces for action figures. Like Tinkercad is a really great program if you're like starting to like get into that world. So if any of you want to get into 3D printing, Tinkerpad is a great place to start. As for like the tool that like I can't live without, I already told you about 3D printers. I think all of us are in agreement that 3D printers are pretty great. And fortunately, they're a lot more accessible these days. But I think the tool that like really changed things, okay, it's kind of cheap, it's like 4 tools, but it's my air tools and I use them for resin casting. It's a air compressor, a pressure pot, a vacuum chamber, and a vacuum pump. And those 4 tools have really opened a lot of doors for me. Making action figures, hand sculpting pieces every time is not a sustainable business model all the time. But there's certain pieces, if they're not, if there aren't any moving joints, like heads for example, I can make molds of them. So I'll use my vacuum chamber and I can mix myself up some silicone for mold making, put it into the vacuum chamber, degas it to get the bubbles out of the silicone, and then I pour it into my molds. And then you cure the mold under pressure in the pressure pot. I usually cure it, if you all want to get into this, I usually cure my molds at around 40 psi. And then you take your mold out. It's usually a bit denser because you've cured it under pressure, and you cut out your master copy, take it out, and now you've got a negative of your sculpt, and you can run that in resin, and curing your resin in the pressure pot also helps reduce defects or bubbles that you're going to get in your final piece. So yeah, I think the air tools, for sure, they revolutionized what I was capable of in my workshop.
So, out of all of these things, we're all makers. We all started doing our shops as based around the Star Cruiser. Not that we weren't doing them before, just we found a very specific genre that we were doing. What was your first Star Cruiser project? And now either your bestseller or your favorite project that you're working on right now?
Okay, so my first project for specifically Halcy-Con to sell.
Either.
I guess. Well, it is the quilt. I just jumped right in with the quilt. And I think my favorite, up until a few days ago, I think it would have been the cookie. But then, in an incredibly short time before the convention, I decided to make a purple. And I made as many as I could. I really did, but I only had a few days. So, yeah. But I love them, and I kissed everyone. Because you sew the eyes on, and then you sew the body, and then you have to turn it inside out, or you have to turn it right side out. And then I have to push it to make sure everything looks right, and then it's looking at me. It's like, hey. So made with love.
Well, and that brings up something because all of our products are things that we've made with love, right? They are my babies. I'm selling these things to people, and they are becoming part of your life, or cosplay, or something. But it is very personal to give something to somebody. My first project that I made was with a Cricut that I finally took out of the box because I was terrified of it. And I made it was an old camera case or binocular case, and I put the first origin on it. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. This Cricut does this. So that was my first project. It was a little purse. But my favorite project, obviously, are the bags that I made, which started out as Christmas stockings for that year. Every year I make my family Christmas stockings. We make 11 Christmas stockings every single year. The previous stockings get hung up on a Christmas tree, and this year we were going to commemorate the Star Cruiser voyage. So I made all those bags, lined them up, laid them, on the fireplace, took a picture, posted it, and people were like, "Oh my God, can we sell it? Can we buy these?" I was like, "I don't know, can I?" Because there's a fine line when you're making stuff where it becomes less fun and it's more of a chore. So you don't want to, you want to straddle that line versus being on either side. But that project, which was something for my family, which I ended up giving to your families, and you guys are buying them and requesting this design or that design or commissioning special things, it's definitely by far, and it's only one product, but it is by far my most favorite because of the way it started, the origin story of that bag.
Yeah.
So I went and looked at my stats because I was curious, and it's funny. The thing that has sold the most are the cabinet door magnets, where you can send me your cabin number. And it's so funny because that's $10. So, but that was almost like a throwaway project because I was going on the Wish Upon a Star Cruiser cruise and wanted one for my door. And then it was so funny because at the same time, there were two other makers. So Dennis there's Dithermaster. He does the ones that are really big and they light up and you can replace the numbers. They're like they have magnet backs. And then this other guy, I think it's Adam or Andrew, did the ones that are like bigger even and more electronic. But it was so funny because we were all making the same thing. And I'll get to the other thing quickly, but I just wanted to deviate, if that's okay, and say, isn't that what's amazing about the freaking Star Cruiser? Is it's not a competition at all. First of all, none of us designed that door thing. That was designed by an Imagineer.
I actually had the same experience as you because we were going on a cruise, and I know the walls are made out of metal and magnets stick to it. And we, got up the Star Cruiser and we're like, no, we want to dress up our door. Oh, I kind of like the door panel, so I just made two, one for us and one for our friends. And so we were on this cruise ship with these two pals and I posted pictures of it on Facebook and the Discord and had the same experience. People are saying, where can I buy that?
Yeah, exactly.
What's Etsy? How does that work?
And that's kind of what it boils down to within the Star Cruiser community, is so much of it is riffing off of art that came from the ship. So none of us own that original art, but we all seem to be really understanding and respectful of our swim lanes, if that makes sense. So, so then I looked to see what made the most money, and it's the travel posters. If you go by the Sasha Records booth in the vendor hall, I have them all hanging, and that was an obsession of mine. And it's another great quick story of collaboration. So I designed these frames to look exactly like the frames from the hallway. Interestingly enough, they do look better as acrylic than they do 3D printed. I tried with the 3D printer, and it's just not that same crispness of the metal that they are in the hallway. But then this guy, Mike, who's got Stellar Screens as his Etsy shop, he recreated from scratch the poster art. Whereas I was trying to do it from photos, and it looked terrible. I thought there was a little strip of LEDs, and somebody was like, no, that's the reflection of the lights across from the poster. I was like, whoops. So anyway, I reach out to him. I say, hey, can I use your artwork for my thing, and I'll trade you a set of posters? And he said, absolutely, I love this. I don't know if you all have been over to the Galactic Ephemera booth, but she is selling pins of 3 of the posters. I gave her the file for the frame to use, so we did a collab, and it's just so beautiful how this community is better in terms of our makes, because none of us feel precious about it or have like this ownership, and I think that just, keeping that going is awesome.
Yeah, funnily enough, my first Halcy-Con project was also what became my best-selling. My first project was a custom Wani action figure that was commissioned by a Halcyon guest, and I guess he was friends with Allie, who played Wani at the hotel, and for Christmas, he wanted to give her a special action figure of her character.
Aww.
So I made that for my customer, and I shipped it away. He gave it to her for Christmas. She appreciated it very much.
Let me guess, it was Sean.
It's okay. And then I ended up being asked to make Wani again. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I know how to do it. Let's do it again. And that was for Holly. I believe she's actually doing a panel here today, or tomorrow. But I know she's doing a panel here. And then the first customer who ordered the first Wani was like, I really liked it, but I had to give it away, and I really want another one. So, so he asked me to make him another one, and I recently finished that one. I think that was back in June of this year. And then the fourth Wani I made was for this convention. It's on display in the other room. But yeah, I think usually doing what I do, each project is kind of like its own thing, its own special piece. So I don't get a whole lot of repeats. Usually customers come to me asking for something different, but people really love Wani. And I've had to make her 4 times now, which is a record at Customs for the Kid.
So Joyce asked if I wanted to ask a question, so now I'm sitting here trying to think of a question. So one of the things that I think is amazing I call like these magical errors, where something goes sideways, but then it ends up being something that you really love and you make more of. Do we have magical error stories, or is that a weird question?
It's not a weird question. I don't know. Usually in Minecraft, when something goes wrong, it goes wrong. But I'll think about it.
I don't know if it's a magical error so much as I can never settle on a design. So I think, what was your phrase? Every project is practice.
I
Right.
love that.
Right, so at first I'm doing the quilts, and the next one I said, well, you know what? I'm gonna see what it's like if I space the lines a little closer. It's like, okay, well, that looks all right, but I don't like it. So I'm going to, the next one I do, now I'm gonna do them a little wider. And then the next one, I'm gonna change the design on the side. And the next one, I'm gonna change the design on the side back. But then I'm gonna use the lighter side. So every one I'm doing is similar, but I'm always looking for a new, different way. And then sometimes I forget. So there is a little bit of, how did I do this? Well, it doesn't matter, I'll just figure it out again. So there's a lot of variation because I keep finding and I keep stretching. It's like, all right, now, first I was doing ruler work, and then I was like, oh no, I could free motion this. Oh yeah. All right, so that's a new technique. It's like, well, now that I've kind of got the free motion technique, let's keep going for it. Let's make that design a little more complicated. And so yeah, it's just things keep changing, and they're not necessarily because they're mistakes, but because I just want to keep doing it different. I want to keep getting it better.
So yeah, mistakes are definitely mistakes. Sometimes they are tremendous, right? You have to throw it, gotta toss it or whatever. But other times, they're just design elements that you guys are getting extra because we know, right, what's perfect for us. You're making a quilt and it looks a specific way. You're doing your things, you were talking about the difference with the acrylic versus the 3D. Same thing, right? But if you're doing something and it's just a different way, it then just turns into a design element. And that's a way to not justify, but accept the difference in variations, right?
So for me, I actually have it for sale here. So I have these cute little Loft Cat Crew tokens that can be made into magnets or pins or whatever. And so I was doing a print run, and two of them went sideways, and so their filament was getting all spread out, and so I just canceled it. And then as I'm peeling it off, I'm like, these are real, there's only 2 layers, but it looks pretty good. So I cut out some clear acrylic that was the same shape and attached them, and then I screwed in little eyelets, and now they're pendants that you can use. And then the other thing, probably once every 3 months or 4 months, I have a scratch and dent sale on Sasha Records, because I don't ship something to someone until I think it's perfect, whereas some of the imperfections are perfectly acceptable. So what I do is I just save that stuff, and then I'll just post it up, and it'll be like $5 for this and $10 for that, and people will buy them because to them it's like, yeah, maybe the color's a little bit off, but I love it. So yeah.
Well, like I said, I don't know. I can't really think of many. Usually, like when I make a mistake, I'll cut oh, I'm just gonna try to use my razor blade and skim a little bit off, and then I cut the whole thing up, and I'm like, uh-oh. Or when I'm painting and I mess up, and I'm like, okay, well, game over. But I was
You
wondering,
could do zombie figures.
we've actually done that.
Okay.
I don't know if any of you, what was it called? I think it was before Rogue One came out. We got Death Troopers, that we know. I think there was an audio. Was it called Death Troopers?
It's either that, yeah, I think it was Death Troopers.
Yeah.
It was a Han Solo,
Yeah,
Chewbacca.
a Han Solo book, and it was obviously before, Rogue One, Death Troopers. And it was the Empire was engineering some kind of biological warfare. It got out, and stormtroopers were getting infected with the zombie virus. And my dad was like, all right, let's do it. So we chopped up some stormtroopers, or I think you made one, right?
I think we made it. Well, I definitely made one.
You definitely made the one.
Yeah.
It was a cool one. It was gory. But yeah, he really chopped chopped it up like zombie figures. You know, sometimes mistakes like that can turn into something. Not that that was a mistake.
Yeah.
That was
I did a
definitely
few like alien ones for Chewy for his photo novel.
Yeah.
Over at yakface.com.
But, I was actually, is it okay if I ask y'all a question?
Please.
I was gonna ask, what project specifically pushed you to like use the most of your tools? And I guess my answer to my own question would be making the Inquisitor from Jedi Fallen Order, the Ninth Sister. And she's a Dewutin, she's like a giant woman, she's got like yellow skin and horns on her chin, and she's like a giant woman. Really cool character. If you've played the game, you know that she's a lot of fun to fight. I ended up making her out of a Halo Brute action figure. And to make it, I had to hand sculpt, I had to mold and cast to get like her red visors. I had to I sculpted the visors and her armor on my laptop, printed all those parts, and then I had to cast her lightsabers and her mask and run them in a clear red resin. So I think out of all my projects, that was a specific one that really pushed me to use every tool I had at my disposal. And she also ended up being one of my more expensive projects. I think she sold for like $1,600.
So my desktop rock garden, if you've seen that, it's a miniature of the one that was in the climate simulator. It's all 3D printed. But there's this moment where you're just like, I want this to be as real as possible. So I'm looking at the photos and I'm like, oh, there's a no climbing sign. This needs to have the no climbing sign. So I print those on my Cricut and then have them cut out, and then I put them on. And so it's like one of those where the poor Cricut, you know, probably looks over at the laser printer and the 3D printer and it's like, woe is me. But man, like, again, the magnets are on the Cricut, but it was one of those where that was the chef's kiss of that product, was the no climbing sign, and it wouldn't have happened without having a Cricut.
So I have to agree with the Cricut. Being terrified of it at the beginning and now utilizing it. All of our machines, I think, have been awarded Employee of the Month. They need little stickers that say Employee of the Month. But
You can make one on the Cricut.
we can make but yeah, I would have to agree, like my sad original 3D printer sitting there next to the shiny new one, and it's just like, oh, and I don't know that I'm going to turn it on because the other one is just so fabulous. But it's just those machines that, I like to say, because I was thrust into many of these, that I'm a kindergarten level education on all of them. Because I know enough to pull the files, transfer the files, get the files where we want it. You know, it's doing and blowing them up and getting them into the 3D stuff. But I really need the dummies part of it. Just step one, turn on your Cricut.
Where's the button?
Read the manual or the 3D printer making that donut, which I've started like 100 times and never finished making my donut. So all of those kinds of things, because we just got into it so quickly and started to churn these things out, that we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know. So that's part of it.
I think it's the bunk bag because it's quilted, so I have to take it over to the long armor to book lines, but it also has the embroidered patch on the front, so I have to, that comes through the embroidery machine, which is only 5 by 7, which means I can only do 4 inches at a time, which means it's 3 separate embroideries. Yes. So you have to line them up.
Every time.
Yeah, yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Isn't that crazy? Right, so there's that. And then it has to come back to the regular sewing machine because that's all of the edging, the bias binding. Which if you've ever needed to put bias binding on, buy the special, not the special bias binding foot, they don't work. It's an offset, so one side of the foot is higher than the other, and it's just magic, absolute magic. I want to complicated, but then, if I, just one more thing. These are the most complicated things I make, and that is a combination of silkscreen and rivets and buttons and glue and everything. They're really complicated and I love them. But yeah, the smaller dimensions stretch. Oh, so sorry.
And I can confirm a 3D printed pip fits inside a pip.
Yes.
I'm up behind.
I don't own a Cricut. If I need something cut, I cut it with my hands.
Okay.
I want a Cricut. I'm gonna put a tip jar out.
I wanted to expand on what June was saying, you know, like having to like line it up to do the embroidery every time. All of you, I'm assuming, are either crafters or want to get better at crafting, otherwise why are you here? But that wisdom that I wanted to extrapolate from that is that being a crafter, there are no rules. Like, we're just like working with the tools in front of us and like kind of like jerry-rigging stuff and like, you know, I'm finding workarounds. Like, there's no real correct way to do it. You gotta make your own correct way to do it.
Yeah.
So, you know, we talked a lot about crafting. We are subject matter experts in our particular genre, but we want to know about what kinds of things either that you yourself have done for your own, whether you're giving them away, or they were for your own things that you were doing, or that you have questions for us about any specific type of how do I do this, that, or the other.
We're opening it up to the
I want to get started with this crippling anxiety over what to actually do.
So my advice, where are you? Right here. Oh, hi. So my advice is pick something you really love. Like,
That's
is there
exactly
an
what I was
item?
gonna say.
Yeah, is there something you want? So for me, it was the atrium art, and I wanted to sublimate it on a metal plate. That was what I wanted to do. Then when you sort of decide what medium you want to work with, if it's a new medium, I have boiled it down to crafting is as simple as can you read instructions and follow them. And that's how I learned to knit, and that's how I learned to sew, and that's how I learned to do my graphic design. It's just like, just take it one instruction at a time, and it's amazing how complex something is. So this bag, I'm just going to say really quickly, there's a group called Halcy-Con, and we had meetups and things, and so Joyce did a class, and during the Zoom call, we all made our own little bag. And it was by following her instructions, and Stuart, who's not here, sewed his first thing ever during that
They
call.
bought the machine just for that.
Anything, and then Brooks isn't here anymore, but he made little cords for them. Because it's cord fabric. So anyway, that's my advice. Pick something you really, really want to make, and then follow instructions.
Well, and don't be afraid to reach out, because each one of these machines or skills, there's a whole community of people who've been through this
And
ramp
we want to
already.
help you.
And they would love to share with you
Yes.
their ideas on how to do it. So if
We
you
want
find
to
a good
recruit more
mentor,
people into our cult of creators.
Yes.
You guys have like a Discord channel? We actually, so there's a group on Facebook, it's called, is it GSC Artists and Makers?
That's one of them.
Yeah, so I'm an admin of it.
Yeah.
And so it's specific to people who want to do artists and make, but specific to Halcy-Con, so just shoot over and you can join.
Yeah, what was it again?
GSC Artists and Makers.
And what was the other group you mentioned before that? How?
Halcy-Con.
Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead.
So, if someone wants to start a shop, art has an idea, especially for things that are handmade. So do you think there's any drawback to having like a limited amount of items in your shop?
I'm gonna say no to that. And there are two arguments. Etsy will tell you that for optimist search engine optimization, you need new items all the time, but as a consumer, if I am thinking, hey, I wonder if anyone's making a pip, something, I'm just gonna type pip.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many other items I have in my shop. If I have a pip, it's gonna come up.
Yeah.
Same with that is, when I first did my Etsy shop, backing up way too far, but I was selling handmade things, I was also selling vintage cross-stitch patterns. It doesn't matter if you have two different things in your shop, because again, someone is just searching for a keyword for a particular item. That they see other things in your shop afterwards is a bonus, but that's not going to affect them finding it.
If what you're making is good and people are looking for it, they're gonna find it and they're gonna buy it.
So I think one thing that really put me back, because I don't have a shop, I have a website and an order form, and there's actually a session later about intellectual property, which we're all like struggling this fine line regarding these images, right? So I was really in the mindset that I was going to stay on the down low until I knew that nobody was coming after me, more so. And all of my stuff is word of mouth. So even a shop isn't necessarily required to start, and you don't have to have a huge stock either, because I do my stuff on demand. I don't have a stockpile. I would love to. You know, you place an order and it's shipped out that same day, but that's not how it happens. They're all made on demand. They have to clear quality control, that I'm happy with it, and so forth. But I don't think a shop is necessary, because if people want your stuff, they're going to share it, and then it becomes word of mouth. So they will help you with that part of it, and then having a stockpile isn't important either, as long as you are clear. And I think people appreciate how it takes that you are taking pride in your work, and that you may not, it may be a little longer to get your thingamajig, but you know that it's been made specifically for you.
So this is just a quick funny story. So Etsy is always wanting to optimize you by telling you to do things. And so I guess I list my shipping times as being really long, but then because I'm a stressed overachiever, I would ship things like 2 days later. So Etsy's like, you have to change your shipping times to be the faster times. And I'm like, no, I want more time. So anyway, ignore their suggestions, by the way.
It's algorithm.
I think Star Cruiser sits outside of so many crafts because the audience is so specific, they know what they want, and we're all buying each other's stuff anyway. Sorry.
In general, the things I make, people always ask me how much. How do you come up with your price points?
Oh, this is an excellent question. Down the line.
I bet we all do it differently.
Well,
This is a hard
So
question.
we're talking about our babies. These
Yes.
are our babies, and we're selling them to people who we love and care about. And it is hard to price your time, because materials are nothing, right? Materials is the least cost involved in anything, but it is your time and your knowledge and what got you there that costs the most. And what I know that what I struggle with, it's hard to take money from friends.
Yes.
It's even harder to tell them how much something costs.
Yeah.
So pricing that way, it's your comfort. And if you're okay with selling something less than, even though you know it's more, it's something that you're going to have to accept on your own. But you have to just get over it, because you are a business,
So-
you're in it to make money.
So the con reached out to me and they said, hey, we'd like you to make 15 of this sign and 4 of this sign and 2 of this sign, and they gave them the price and they went, whoa. And so I said, hey, are you thinking of doing sponsorships? And they were like, actually, we are thinking about it. And I said, well, if you decide to, I'd be happy to make you these in exchange for sponsorship. But man, I wanted to just give it to them.
Yes.
But for me, pricing, you're gonna laugh, but it's my stomach, it's my gut. I look at something and I think, how much do I feel comfortable? How much would I pay for it? And then,
We're gonna come back to that once you get to
yeah,
it.
how much would I pay for it? And then I think, okay, how much am I comfortable paying for it? And usually it lands somewhere in there. People tell me my stuff is underpriced, but it fits me and what I want. And eventually, I think you also know, like if things aren't selling, you can kind of think about it, but always start with the price that you are comfortable as highest. I had to raise prices on something once, and it went okay, but it definitely, the product took a hit. So go with the higher number first, and then you can.
Okay, so obviously, you need to know your costs. You need to know the value of the product, and don't shortchange yourself just because the yarn came from the stash that grandma has and you got it for free. It's still, no, you don't count free stuff as free.
It's material.
Because if if you use that up, and now you have to go and buy it at full price,
You need the money.
you're out. You are out, so you have to correctly value your materials. You have to value your time, and that's the cost of your item. You have to do that accurately. I do time studies. When I start making something, I know to the 15 minutes how long it takes me to make that, and I do it several times because I'm going to get faster. So once I get that realistic, this is how long it takes me to make a quilt. This is my hourly wage for that, and I apply that, and I try not to cut that down because this is my income.
Right.
So there's that, but then how do you price that? And you ask the question, how much would you pay for it? Now this is where everything goes to crap.
It gets real subjective.
Because, and don't take this the wrong way, please. This is going to make me sound like a horrible person. How much would you pay for that quilt, June? It's like, I wouldn't buy anything from my shop. I would not, because I can make it.
Oh.
And there's that thing, it's like, I wouldn't buy any of this. I wouldn't pay money for this because I can make it. And that's my mindset that I cannot get out of. So I send it out to the brain trust, and it's like, okay, I'm not telling you what my cost is. I need to know from you completely that. What would you pay for this? How much do you think it's worth? How much is that? And then I have to take those two numbers and find a happy medium. Because and for the Halcyon stuff especially, the bunk bags especially, I am not really making enough on those. But I want everyone who wants one to get one. And I will keep making them until everyone who wants one gets one. And that's, for the bunk bags, that's it. For the quilts, everything else I'm comfortable, everyone seems comfortable with the prices. But the bunk bags, it's just like, no, I'm keeping that one low because I have to. I have to.
Hi. So I feel like I'm a little closer to like what you do. I make rugs. So
Oh my God.
so I've been doing that for like a year and a half, going on 2 years.
The tufted ones?
Yeah. So I'm like, after going on the Star Cruiser, of course it was like, I want to make this into a rug, and that into a rug. So make everything. But I think kind of a combination of what some people have said, like pricing obviously, but when you're doing things that are handmade, which like it is a lot of like, it's a lot of steps and cutting by hand and tweezers and all these things. But even though like, do you feel like your pricing changed when you first started? You felt like, well, I'm kind of new to this, am I aiming, my price is too high, should I start a little lower? It's like,
Start high.
Yeah.
And for some,
You'll always be tempted to start low.
at this point, I do not balk, and now it's probably because I'm a maker, but like, I don't balk at people's prices, because I trust that they're telling me. But it was, so someone, Tony James, I don't know if you all know him, he made this Saja tunic for me, and he was going to charge me the cost of the fabric. And I sent him a lot more money than that, and I said, do not charge less than this amount. You can charge more, and then I got a deal, but do not charge less than this amount. And you just, especially people who do the hand, 100%, you've got to charge. And then people will love it. And if they don't want to pay that much, there's someone behind them who does.
That's the thing, you gotta set your prices high
His
because
prices are ridiculous, but the stuff is fucking amazing. All right, take that off the video.
Thank you. No, your prices are perfect.
Sorry, I didn't
still-
mean,
Yeah, I know what
you
you
know
meant.
what
I know what you
yeah,
meant.
but like I have to charge that much because I need to make a fair wage for my work. And you see, like, there's plenty of people who are gonna look and be like, I don't want to pay that much, and I'm like, that's fine. There's someone who does.
Yeah.
Well, and something you also have to keep in mind when you're shipping, you have to make sure you include the cost of your mailing, not just postage and handling, but whatever your box.
Oh, I charge for shipping.
Materials.
I never charge. But you should charge for shipping.
Yeah.
Ignore Etsy with the free shipping, I don't know what their deal is. Like, at the end of the day, I was losing money because I was doing free shipping.
Especially like in my
I had the
situation,
other direction.
if you're making like a specialty item and you need to insure it when you ship it, make sure you charge for your insurance too,
Yeah.
because that gets really expensive. And it's really important, if a high value product you made goes missing and you're liable, not good.
Especially something as delicate as you make, you
Yeah.
really have to very carefully.
Oh, I package them and wrap them in a little nest of bubble wrap, give them a little kiss.
Yeah,